Welcome to the Zen Perry Project. Today on the show, we have Dango from Truckfighters. We're very, very excited for this interview, and we appreciate you taking the time to do this. And let's just jump right into it. So we put out some questions on Reddit for your fans, and overwhelmingly, people asked about the name of the band. I'm sure you get that a lot. And I'm sure it's been said many, many times, but I have a special question for you about it. So the name of the band, from what I've heard from your interviews, is that it came from a book series. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And how did you end up with this book series? Because you said it was a terrible.
Yeah, no, I think also, or like the original, the guy who played drums on the first like pre-demo recording AV, one of them, I don't remember who of them it was, found one of these books on a flea market and gave it to the other guys. Like, look, here's a book for you, because it had a really nice cover with a track and a nice logo, and I was like, wow, Truckfighters, like, read this book. And then it was quite hilarious, I guess. So it was fun to name the band after that kind of Pulp Fiction series style book.
Yeah, and so you said you liked the cover of it. Did that sort of cover, or did the art for the book kind of inspire some of the art for the band at all, or was it just that you liked that book cover?
Well, yeah, a little bit, I would say, at least in the early days. I mean, not now, but in the beginning, it was more, haha, let's do this or let's do that. I think the first like gig poster we had, we took the book cover and just scanned it and printed it bigger, and then like live. So we used it in the early days. So it's like the concept of truck drivers a bit, I guess.
Yeah,
So
I like that. I mean, you kind of that's a really easy way to get a logo. Just scan a shitty book cover.
yeah.
That's there you go. There's your answer, people. So you're just talking about the intro, the starting of the band, and you've gone through so many drummers, and you even had a tour that was who's playing drums on this tour, which I think is hilarious. And as a drummer myself, who's played in bands that have had a million drummers, what is that kind of relationship like? How did the band originally start, and what made it kind of difficult for you to find the right people?
Yeah. But at first, I mean, also and this other guy with the book, they were studying together like 1 year more after, because we met when we studied sound engineering, and then they studied the same thing, but in another town the next year. So they needed something to record. So then they did like the first kind of rough demo recording, and they just like, yeah, let's call this Truckfighters after the book. And then I heard it in the summer of 2001. I don't even remember where it was. It was at a festival called Hultsfred Festival in June. It's 2001. And then so I listened to it and I was like, guys, this is much better than your other band. Let's do something out of this. So
What they
that's
say
how
though?
it started. And then, but that guy who was the first drummer, I mean, he did something like maybe 4 rehearsals and one show we did in Örebro. And then he was like, no, I don't have time for 2 bands, and you might have to find someone else. So then we found Mr. Peso, but I mean, everybody's into a little bit. Truckfighters knows that Peso has had a history of a lot of issues with drugs, and also his mind, I guess, kind of what is what, self-medicates with the weed and other substances. Used to, at least. I hope it's better now, because now he's got a kid and trying to sort himself out. But anyways, we met him, or he was kind of, in the scene. Örebro is not that big, and he was young, and he was the kind of drummer who would skip school just to go playing drums instead. So that was great.
Yeah.
And then we rehearsed very intensively, and then recorded the first demo, or first EP, like Desert Cruiser original EP thing, in And then we did 2 shows, and all this in like 2 months. Like wrote the songs, rehearsed them, recorded them, 2 shows in 2 months. But then Mr. Peso had to take a break from the band because he had another band, and those guys were a bit jealous that we played so much and did so many things. So said like, no, we this is your main band, come on. But yeah, that worked out eventually anyway. So I mean, he was in the band until 2004, I think. So it was just 3 years. That the first session of Peso, and then he was, too much into the weed, because then he, instead of going to the rehearsal room, he stayed in his room smoking weed. So then we had to find another drummer. And then we looked around a lot, and we found Mr. Paco, and he was a local guy that we didn't know at all beforehand, actually. But he was the older brother of a guy we rehearsed with. We shared rehearsal room with another band, and it was his brother, but we didn't even know he was the drummer. So then I think that the band, I forgot Mr. Fredo. He joined with Mr. Peso again after around 2004, but he disappeared 2007, 8. But we had a few years there, in 2004 until 2008, where we kind of the fundament of the band. We were 4 at that time, and we were the same people for 4 years. And we did the first 2 full-length albums. I think that kind of shaped the whole thing with Truckfighters, and we toured as much as we could, even though at that time the scene was so small that it was really hard to get shows. We had to work really, really hard to book shows, just as any new band, I guess. But you would play for between 5 and 75 people, and it was like, wow, this is so cool. It was quite crazy times, actually.
And then, I mean, what was that whole scene like back then? Like playing those first couple shows, was it?
It was weird because our music's kind of a sub-genre of music, like the stoner rock thing. As we know, those who know it usually obviously like it, but for a lot of people, it's weird. It's not heavy enough, or it's too heavy, and it's not like 70s enough, or whatever, because it's something in between so many genres. And I don't know, so many times when we were sending out our demo CDs or a first record, we sent it out, and we want to play, this is our Gravity X album, book us. It's like, this is not metal, it's not really rock. I don't know if people who will go and listen to this. It's like, it was so underground at that time. On the other hand, the people who came to the shows, they were super enthusiastic, because there was almost no other bands playing this kind of music at that time. So I think that also made us a bit legendary, in the sense that we did it when no one else did. And it also made us, like, I think the music kind of like traveled across borders, because it was so niched, and then also it was in the early days of file sharing as well. So you had Napster and those things. But we didn't understand until we went to South America for the first time around 2012, I think, or 13, how much that had done for the music. Because officially we sold like 50 records in Brazil, and nothing, and we didn't have any distribution in Argentina or something. And then we played the first show in Buenos Aires, and it comes 800 people to the show. So we were big in Argentina, but we had no clue.
Do you think kind of being a more niche project actually helps touring in kind of different areas? Because I guess
definitely.
And I guess it wasn't a huge stoner rock sort of vibe at that time in place. Would you say it's like a bigger scene nowadays?
Yeah.
Than when you
so
started?
Much bigger. It's you can't even compare it. I mean, the bands that were big stoner bands when we started playing, if you Dozer, for example, they've still played when we started, and then they quit. We saw them in Sweden once, I remember, for 40 people came out. and they were a big stoner band at that time. I saw the Argentinian band. Speaking of Argentina, Los Natas came to Sweden once, and I went to see them. It was 60 people or something, 70 people coming to the show. But nowadays, the bigger stoner bands, they draw hundreds of people in Sweden. If you have, I don't know who would be a Fu Manchu or Sleep or whatever, in the big bands, they would draw 5, 6, 7, 800 people come, and small bands can go quite well as well. And if you go down in Europe, and it's also grown in the States. I think the States were maybe 5 years after Europe, but it's really expanding in the States as well. Because if you go down in Germany or Central Europe, UK, in the main cities, not in the countryside, there's not so many people coming out, but it's a really good scene, I think, in the bigger cities in Europe these days.
Yeah, and
people
Desertfest
come to shows
out there, and so all these shows are still popping up, and I think it's getting bigger and bigger by the year. I totally.
I mean, and you have so many small, like 1-2 day festivals, which are niched into stoner and 70s, a little bit metal, but nothing of that existed when we started. I mean, I think the first Desertfest version came up, was that 10 years ago now? So the first 10, 12, 13 years as a band, there were no stoner festivals at all. And now you have these kind of festivals. Every country in Europe has their stoner festival, I think, now.
Yeah, and we're going to Desertfest in New York City, which you're going to be playing at. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're supposed to. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say it yet, but we're unfortunately going to have to cancel our whole US trip this time. We had a whole tour plan, but it's not going to work out for family reasons.
Oh, sorry to hear that. Well,
but we're going to come back when everything settles down.
With a Fury. Yeah.
Yeah.
With Fury, you're going to come back with Fury.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to be looking forward to you guys coming out here. So
I mean, we haven't been in the States for a long time now, so it's would have been really fun. But it's we have to deal with some family issues now for a while.
Yeah, well, sorry to hear that, and sending our best wishes your way. Kind of going back to you were talking about recording, basically, these first demos and stuff like that. What got you into recording, and where did you record these very early like demos? And we want to even ask about your very first album.
No, that's a fun question. It's been a while since we talked about that in interviews. I mean, I thought that it was fun with sound and video, so I studied like media related in, what would that be, in the US? Is it college or high school, whatever, upper school? When you're something like 15, then I started 16. Then I studied media, which is a bit wider, for a few years, and then when I was 19, I had sound engineering, like a specific course, sound engineering only, for a year. And there I met Mr. Oso. And then when we started Truckfighters 2 years later, we obviously recorded ourselves. So the first recording we did in the studio where I worked, which was a nice room, professional studio. And then when we did our second little EP recording, then we went back to the school and borrowed like the recording equipment, and we put the drums in a small, what would that be, the word for that in English? Like, there's like a concrete, like a little walkway under the ground in between two bigger houses, kind of, or buildings.
Just like a hard sounding hallway, like, so
yeah, like a long hallway. So we put the drums there, and we do these really long cables for the microphones. So we had the drums in a really special room. Then we recorded it. So that was really fun. And then when we did the Fuzz Bit of the Century recording, the next release we did, then we put the drums in like a sports hall, not huge, but still like a bigger room, quite a big room, where people were playing like a floorball or basketball or whatever. So it sounded really big naturally. We didn't have to add reverb. So we tried a lot of weird things the first years because we thought it was really fun and we were young and ambitious to try stuff. But then when we did Gravity X, we had started our own little studio in a bomb shelter where we rehearsed. So then we recorded that in Studio Bomb Shelter, that we called it, and second album, same place. And then we had to move from that rehearsal or studio to another bomb shelter, luckily. And there we built a little bit more serious studio. We had time and money to buy more gear. So then it was a professional studio suddenly.
But you had to record at bomb shelters. I mean, I guess they have more of those in Europe. So that makes sense.
Yeah. So we had 2 studio bomb shelters locations, but we only call it Studio Bomb Shelter, obviously. But now we had to move again because of the war in Ukraine, because now the Swedish government says that all the bomb shelters has to be ready to use, which is weird. Yeah, they are afraid of the Russians again, which makes sense and makes not sense. So we had to move out last year from that place. So now we are studio-less. Oh, no studio at the moment, but soon we will have a new one somewhere.
Wow. Yeah, it's these weird things that you never think would come up unless you get to ask some questions. Like, you get to do a podcast and you just find out, wow, I guess the war in Ukraine is affecting, the stoner rock scene in Sweden.
Yeah, and also like the Ukrainian bands. What we had on our Fuzz festival that we organized in Stockholm last year in December, was it last? No, I don't remember if it was November or December last year. Then we had Stone Jesus from Ukraine, and then 4 months later there's a war down there. So yeah, it's weird how close it is nowadays. These bad things going on.
Yeah, it's so unnecessarily stupid what's going on with Russia, and yeah,
the whole in the modern society to even have borders. I think it's a bit, you're on that side of the road, so you cannot do this or that. But we do. It's just, I don't get it.
Since people know each other on both sides of the road too.
Yeah, and you have all this. You send an email like poof, and you talk to someone on the other side of the planet, but then suddenly you cannot cross a border. It's just old. I don't understand how it can be like that.
You just gets into troublesome situations. What were you first? I feel like I could talk about that forever. But what were you first kind of recording on? Were you back in 2001? I guess when you guys were like young and getting into recording, what were you recording on, like analog boards or Pro Tools? What was like kind of your first like gear setup for?
The first thing we recorded, we had a big analog desk, and then we recorded on this old Alesis ADAT digital, kind of a videotape, but it was digital recording in some way. That feels really old now. But we recorded the first things on that, and then we started to do just the computer-based recording systems already on last bit of the century. But we always used the tube preamps on everything to get it warm and nice, even though it's computer. I think a lot of people, they are not how do you say that? They are not careful, but they don't think enough about the sound when they record, and they think they're gonna fix everything when they mix it. But I think it's better to have a nice sound from the start, and you push the preamp so it kind of distorts, and then like, wow, this is good, and then you don't have to do too much things after. Especially nowadays when you have everything in a computer, it's hard to get that warm feeling, I think, in the post-production.
I completely agree. I have a Universal Audio, X8P and stuff like that. But really, like the best things when you have a nice warm, tube amp going into.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds great when you recorded it like it should sound, but I think it's still these days it's hard to emulate the real warmth with plugins. It's a lot of work to get it to sound the way you want it.
Completely agree. What is your relationship with, because you kind of mentioned that metal, or I guess your band was seen as maybe not heavy enough to be metal and not light enough to be rock and roll. It was kind of in between the zone. What's kind of your relationship with both of those ends? Like, what's your relationship with like 70s rock and roll, and what's your relationship with maybe like Swedish black metal?
But personally, I mean, I am 43 years old. I grew up with the grunge scene. I didn't like the music that came before. I didn't like Guns N' Roses or Metallica, the early stuff. I don't like Metallica nowadays too, though. I mean, a lot of people like Guns N' Roses, and then Nirvana came. It's like now I'm listening to Nirvana and Guns N' Roses. But I kind of started to listen to music for real when the grunge bands came. And for me, 70s rock is some things I enjoy, but I prefer to listen to like Jimi Hendrix more than Led Zeppelin or AC/DC. You know, I think a lot to me 70s rock sounds a little bit too old. I don't know. I have a problem with the sound sometimes. It's not, and I don't like the way modern bands try to sound so much as 70s bands, because why are you trying to do your own thing, you know? In one way, and another way, whatever. If that's their thing, of course they should do it. But Swedish black metal, I have no relation at all to.
Yeah,
I think that kind of how do we go, signifies significant thing with, I guess, why I ended up playing this kind of music, because it's kind of a little bit soft metal, I guess, or heavy rock, and that's what I like. I don't like too much metal, and I don't like too soft rock. Even, of course, I listen to different stuff, but not that much different stuff. But I don't listen much to stoner bands too. I like Caius. I like some of the Fu Manchu stuff. Of course, there's other bands who has good songs, and I like a lot of the bands released on Fuzzerrama, of course. I mean, I can't say I like all songs all bands have done, but I like them. Otherwise, we wouldn't release them.
yeah.
But when I listen to music, it's like when people say, "Oh, which stoner bands do you listen to?" And like, the only real stoner band I ever listened a lot to was Caius, actually, and I didn't discover them until 2000, 99 or 2000, something like that.
Yeah, wow. I mean, they came out in like 1987, so that's they were around for a minute before that. What was your first introduction? Like, who at what point did you start getting introduced into that world of music? Or who introduced you to
Well,
Kaya?
it was when I studied sound engineering, and the first drummer, demo recording drummer of Truckfighters, the guy who found the book or got the book from, also, I don't remember, but he gave me the Caius albums and it's like, listen to this. And then I took it and I went home and listened to it, and it's like, it was too much. They have 4 Caius albums in a row. So then I went back. It's like, yeah, it sounded pretty good, but I'm not sure if I'm really into this. And then a few months later, I did the same thing again, because then I had heard the songs on parties a bit more and got into it in a bit more proper pace, I guess, because it was, it's quite heavy to put all those albums in a row after each other and just listen to it. So that was how it was. And since then, I liked. I still think, maybe it's because the first thing I listened to, but I still think Caius is my favorite stoner band in that sense. And it's hard. I think it's hard for other bands. It doesn't matter which band you listen to first, but if there's something to get you into a scene, I think that's all pretty often going to be your favorite. The same as if you listen to a band and you like the first 2 albums a lot, and then they change their style a little bit, probably you're not going to like the third one as much. So, but I remember that quite well, actually. That was a nice period of the life.
And then at some point you decide, like, I want to make music that sounds similar to this, and then you're like, we're just gonna play it around our country.
I think it was when I heard that the demo of the first really weird rough Truckfighters called tape, then I was like, yeah, let's do something this. I want to play with you guys. So then I got handed the big muff, the distortion pedal, fuzz pedal from Mr. Osos. Like, take this. This is my fuzz pedal when I play guitar. You have to use it. Okay. So and then just all the knobs on the amp on maximum because it was I don't remember even which one I used to be. I was an old Marshall JMP 50, and it was just 50 watts, so it was not so loud that I really wanted. So everything was on maximum, and then the fuzz pedal was like, oh, this sounds really cool. So it just came like sent from the God of rock and roll somehow.
Yeah, we definitely have to ask this question. Who do you think has the most fuzz pedals in the band?
Most fuzz pedals must be me, obviously.
Yeah,
Heck yeah.
yeah. What is
But,
one that you can't live without? What is one that is part of every recording, every show that you play?
And nowadays it's my custom Dango pedals. But it's a replica of a Russian Big Muff. So before it was a Russian Big Muff, but they broke down all the time. So then I got to know a guy called David from the band Deadly Vipers that we actually released on Fuzzerrama now eventually after knowing him for a few years. So he took my Big Muff pedals and he changed all the cables in them. So and redid the whole wiring and soldering so they wouldn't break all the time. And then he told me like, I'm gonna make a new pedal for you that sounds like that instead, so it's gonna last much longer. So then he did one, and then he did another one, and then he did another one. So I have 3 custom pedals now that I use, and I don't use my Russian Big Muffs. I have them somewhere, just memorabilia.
Yeah,
but I still have a few.
yeah. So I guess you have your own pedals. That's why do you think they were breaking down so much? Were you just like abusing them, or just you were just using them so much that they just like couldn't keep up? They're old like
I
that?
think it was a bit of both. I mean, the quality was maybe not the best, but also, I mean, I was literally jumping on it when I was putting it on or off, so it had to withstand a lot.
Yeah, your whole body weight plus some coming down on for that.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I mean, the fact that you made a pedal that can actually withstand that's a lot.
Yeah. I also learned how to do it. So I bought a switch, what do you call it, AB switch, which is just a switch, and then those knobs, no, what do you call it, the switches in them are top-notch quality. They're like, so you pay something like $250 for the only thing it does is switch between A and B. And then the first one I bought of those broke down after a while, actually. But now the other ones I have has been working for a long time.
Oh yeah.
I don't press so much on the actual fuzz pedal anymore. It's usually just stands there on my side of the on, and then I have another switch that connects it or not.
There you go. You got a little buffer in between.
Yeah.
Keep it maximum fuzz all the time, then you're set. Yeah. Like you don't have to turn it on and off if it's.
Yeah, you're like, yeah.
Come on, we're quite dynamic these days, so it's we have a lot of parts without fuzz actually, or less fuzz.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that. I mean, you're in general pretty. I mean, people have called you more or less kind of going in the prog direction, like prog rock direction. How did you ever like go to school for music besides recording, or you just
no.
always just jamming out to stuff? Like what?
I think I took some guitar lessons in the public music school that we have in Sweden, which all kids can try an instrument, and then they can have something like 20 minutes a week personal what do you call it? Yeah, sit with teacher, well, just you and a teacher for 20 minutes a week. And the trick at that time, I don't know how it is nowadays, because Sweden has become less good the last 30 years. But at that time, you could take 20 minutes off from any lesson in regular school to go play your instrument. So that made a lot of kids try instruments.
What class did you want to take off most?
It was a German language, I remember, that I usually skipped. So
there you go. That makes sense. You're just over it. So Fuzzerrama, what made you want to start your own label? Like how did that come about?
I mean, also, I think we're both quite ambitious people that we're not really afraid of trying things. And when we did the first 2 demo recordings, EPs, that we later released it as Hidden Treasures of Fuzz on vinyl. after we did these two, and we had sent it out to maybe, I don't know, 10 or 15 record labels or something, like, release us, come on. And no one wanted to release us because, you know, the stoner rock, no one understood it at that time, almost. And the labels who are used to release stoner rock kind of didn't make any money on it, I guess. Man's Ruin was bankrupt, and we didn't find anyone who wanted to put effort into Truckfighters. So then, instead of doing more demo EPs, we just like, fuck it, let's release something on our own label. So we just had this strange idea to the label, and we had no idea how or what we were doing. So we started, and then we learned how to produce, what files to send and how to do it and send it, and contact vinyl producers and copyright organizations and this whole thing. And we chased distribution for a long time. But the whole idea to like make it a bit short was that we were tired of making demos and wanted to have a real record to show when we were looking for shows, and to be taken more seriously, I think.
Yeah, and what's more serious than coming out on your own record label?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. At first, people didn't really think that we were serious when we said it, when we announced it and talked to people like, this is our record label, and said, it's just a demo, you know. So then pretty soon we stopped saying that it was our own record label, and then the reception was much better.
Oh, you were just like, yeah, we released on Fuzzerrama.
Yeah. And we pretended that we were not in a band when we mailed and talked to people, and it was so much better at that time. But I don't know when, but at some point it kind of changed. So then it became cool to do it yourself. So now we can say that we are in the band. That's okay.
I love that. Yeah, take notes, kids. Just say you got released on a record label, even if it's your own distribution.
Yeah. No, but if you want me to give an advice to kids, which sometimes you people want me to do, because I mean, you can still be lucky and you can send a demo to a record label and they can put it out and something happens. I mean, obviously. But I don't think that you should just wait for it to happen. I usually say that do something. You don't really need to know if the right thing to do, because it's better to do something than just sit around and think, what should I do? Or can we really do this? As long as you do something, you make something happen, you have fun, the band is active or something is happening around the band, then it's better than sitting there. How do we do this? I don't know. Can we do this? Why isn't someone calling us now? Why didn't forget all that. I mean, do stuff and things will happen if you are persistent enough and you're having fun, I think.
Yeah. What other sort of advice would you say for people who are like starting bands? That was actually another question offered from people from Reddit. They were like, yeah, what are your advice for somebody starting a band like today, like 2023? Like how has it changed?
Do your own thing. I mean, don't think so much what other people think, because I say originality is really hard to have, and if you find that in the long run, it's gonna be much better than trying to sound like what's popular right now. And like I said just before, like, just do things. It doesn't matter what you do. I think just do things. Obviously, try to be active on social media these days. I think is very important for new bands, much more than for established bands. Obviously, that's the way that how some bands can grow, but don't get lost. I mean, the music is still the most important thing.
Yeah, and so I mean, you have a background in media of all sorts and types. How do you keep it fun? How would you recommend somebody keeping it fun? Because for a lot of people, it can feel like a total like slog, just trying to like put yourself out on social media constantly and this and that. What keeps it sort of fun for somebody to present media of themselves?
I mean, I'm not gonna lie and say that we think it's been fun every day for 22 years, but most of the time we had fun, you know. And I think it's because we don't try to do something that it's not really we do everything just the way we feel like it, and we don't think what's he gonna think or what's he gonna think or how is this gonna look on the internet. We just do things and then this is fun, let's post it, or oh, look at that angle, it's really weird. We don't think like that. We just poof, that's good. And we always had this idea that we do music for ourselves and not for for the crowd. If people like it, it's a bonus. But I think we have the same approach to everything with social media, for example. That we don't think so much like, oh, we have to do things that people like now. We try to do something once in a while when we think it's fun, and yeah, we have too many things to think about to do things we don't enjoy anymore, to be honest.
I feel that. I feel like that's the general vibe of the whole world right now. It's like, just do something you like, you know. There's no guarantees of tomorrow anymore, so just try to have fun with it. So you have Fuzzerrama and you have all these incredible bands on it. Who are you listening to right now? What are you excited about with Fuzzerrama? What's kind of been some music that's kind of been playing for you a lot?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy that Skräcködlan is gonna put out a new record next year, and the first single is coming in 3 weeks, I think now. So I'm listening to that a bit now. I kind of listen to all the newer Fuzzerrama stuff once in a while, and now we haven't released something really recently, so it's a good timing for them to come with new music. I don't listen that much to music these days because I have two small babies, two girls that are below 2 years old, both of them. So my ears are kind of tired.
That's fair enough.
That's a full-time job.
What do you I mean, what do you do to entertain yourself? You watch a lot of movies? What are you just constantly with the babies now?
Now, but I hang out a lot with my family. I don't really do much like apart from that, but obviously I watch a lot. I watch series and movies with my fiance, and I don't need to entertain myself that much. I have two small children that entertains me, so I'm happy with my life. I don't need so much more.
That's beautiful. That's making me happy to hear that. That's great. What I mean, we have to ask about it because Josh Homme is one of our favorite people. What did it kind of mean when he said that you're one of his favorite bands, or that he just enjoyed you, or what'd that feel like?
Oh, it was weird because obviously you can see it is making a bit of fun, but it's still nice, the fun that he said it. So of course it means something. I think it was really cool, and I mean, a lot of people seems to have noticed because a lot of people ask about it. So even if he really didn't know about the band when he said it, at least he knew it after.
That's great. I mean,
but it seems to be. I think it seems to be a really nice guy, and I mean, they did one Facebook post promoting the documentary movie on the Queens of the Stone Age Facebook page back in 2011 or whenever it was, 12, and that did a lot for our publicity. Like that post probably was years of work happening in 5 minutes, So that's we're grateful for, that he actually supported in that sense. But I think he also got a bit tired of those questions. I saw some interview and it's like, come on, don't ask about that anymore, or something like this. And it's funny. But we went to see them when they did that a European tour. I don't know if he did in the States. I'm not that kind of hardcore fan, but in Europe they did a tour where they played the first album from start to finish. And then we went to see them. I think this was just maybe a year after the documentary came out, or he did that very spoken about interview. And then we were invited to come to the show and get a backstage pass, and we said hello and we thanked him for participating. So that was at least nice to be able to do that.
Yeah, wow. I mean, that's incredible. Have you listened to the new album at all? I mean, you're not listening to a lot of, so yeah, I kind of figured.
When I said like this band that you like the first 2 or 3 albums, then they changed style. I mean, which band would I think about then? So I think that what he did after Songs for the Deaf, it kind of goes in the wrong direction, music style wise. But I really understand bands that don't want to play the same thing the whole career. because that would be boring. But it's become too much pop music for my taste in somehow.
That's
I
fair.
don't know.
I mean, their first album is incredible, and Songs for the Deaf, like the drumming on that album is just absolutely incredible.
I still think that the first one and Songs for Deaf, they're two of my favorite albums when I think about music. So spontaneously, then I have some grunge albums obviously on the list. I like Tool a lot, but not the last two. But yeah,
Yeah.
some things Josh Homme did has been totally amazing. Mikai is still one of my favorite bands when I listen to some old music. So
Yeah, and yeah, they're still playing, still doing their thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I think that Josh Homme in general is just like he Cooley is still kind of keeping up like the stoner rock genre and still talking about that. And yeah, it was cool to just see that he's such a fan of you guys, even if he's just joking about it. Uh, what do you think about cardio? So when was the last show that you played?
June 16.
Okay,
We played.
not that long ago. So you guys are running around, jumping a lot. Did you have to like prepare to like get back on stage? Because I assume you go pretty hard.
Well, I kind of try it before touring to get a little bit in shape, but it's not that easy to find time when you have small kids at home to go and work out. On the other hand, you keep yourself in a decent condition when you carry them around and do all the things. So I think I had a good good base of my physics from when I was young, and I played football and soccer for you and ice hockey for many years. And but yeah, nowadays when I'm or more than 40 years old, I kind of feel it when I haven't been playing for a while. After the show, it's like my body is. So yes, I should prepare more than I've been doing the last year or two.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just have to ask. I mean, I feel like Slayer is still playing. There's still these guys out there that are still killing it. I mean, Tool is still playing. Those guys are much older, and it's
I don't. Speaking of that, I think that's a bit. I just think on that sometimes. The first bigger tour we did was supporting Fu Manchu in Europe back in 2007. And then Scott Hill had his 40th birthday on the tour. And we were like, oh, it's 40 and he's still doing it. Oh, it's so cool. Wow. You can really, we have many more years to go to make it that big. So I think it's fun, and I am older than he was then. So yeah, and he still plays. So
yeah, there you go. That's just the way it goes.
yeah.
So what sort of if you have you ever really had doubts about the band, because you never like started this band to get big? That was never your guys' things. You were just always having fun with it and just enjoying it. Was there ever at any point where things maybe started to get like more money coming in, where you started like kind of doubting like what you're doing, and how did you kind of get through that, if that ever happened to you?
No, I think that the older you get and the more like you get family, you got responsibilities. I think you need to make a bit of money to be able to tour as much as we done, at least a little bit money, because otherwise you're not going to be able to keep on pushing like that for all those years and with a full-time job on the side like we had for so many years in the beginning. And then you do all the promotion work for the band, and you do play and you rehearse and you write songs and record. At some point you don't have that energy. You need to sleep a bit more maybe when you're older, or when you have kids you cannot sleep or takes time. So I don't know where that point is, but at some point the band needs to make a bit of money, so maybe you can be away from your regular job and you don't lose money on it at least. I don't think it was a problem for us that we started making some money. That's probably it's the opposite. But it was never the intention. We always play music because it's a lifestyle, and if you're a musician, you just have to do it. Otherwise, you don't feel good in yourself.
Yeah.
But it's different ways of doing it. I mean, you can play a little bit and do a few shows here and there, but if you do it like your full-time occupation, you can only do it for so long before you need to make money, because otherwise it's too much to also work full-time, I would say.
Yeah, it's just a lot of work per week. So you guys were practicing a lot at the start. How often were you practicing? Maybe a week. How often were you like working on the band to start the band? Like 10, 20 hours a week, or like just a couple practices here or there?
Well, I mean, music practice, we tried to play at least, I think, between 2 and 3 times a week in the beginning when we were writing songs, we were learning how to play together, we were learning instruments still in some way. But these days we rehearse like many old bands. We rehearse basically a few times before a tour if we haven't played for a while. I mean, now we're not going to rehearse before the next show in August, but then it was 2 months before we played. But we're not going to rehearse anything because we know the songs, you know. But in the beginning, we rehearsed regularly and quite a lot, and then we spent even more time trying to, you know, do the work around the band. Maybe not instantly the first thing we did, but after a year or two, we realized that it was so much work promoting, and I mean, we did everything ourselves: the recordings, the artwork, sending out, looking for shows. So that was kind of a relief when we started to get booking agents that were good. So we didn't have to send around music to 1,000 clubs to get 3 answers. So
Yeah. And back in that day, I mean, I guess, was it file sharing, or is it you were actually sending physical CDs?
no, we sent physical CDs.
Wow, I don't even know how to mail anything. That's
It
awesome.
also costed a bit of money to do this, obviously, and time. So those were the days.
Those are the days. And wow, so I think that's really important for people starting off bands. It's like you just got to be around each other a lot to like figure out what the music sounds like, what you actually want to do, and become your sort of own originality. What did your friends and family kind of think when you were first starting the band? Because I mean, like you said, was not a super popular genre of music because your friends and family had to come to the first shows, and what were the reactions?
Yeah, I mean, the friends who were in the scene around the band, they thought it was cool. But I remember one guy I know who had the first show we did, and he came up to me after. He's like, "Yeah, it sounded decent, and you know, but you can't have these long songs. No one has these long songs." It's like, yeah, well, that's how we do it. We have long songs. And yeah, it took many years before people around understood the whole greatness of it, I think. And you know, the classic that no one understood why we went away touring without making money in the first and putting so much time and energy into it. And it's like, when are you gonna get a real proper job and all those things you hear when you're an artist before you actually break a little bit at least. But it was fun. I remember the first time we went to the States, and that tour we didn't make any money at all, obviously, because it was the first tour in the States. Something like 2010 or 11, I don't remember when it was. But we thought it was great. We came to the States and we got a little bit of funding from Swedish Culture Fund or something to cover the flights. And then we went there, and the merch and the fees covered the gas basically, and some hotels, and we stayed at people's places. And then we come home to Örebro, and then you have people you haven't talked to for years comes up in the streets like, "Oh, I read about you in the local paper. You've been in the States. Wow, must be going so good now. You're making a lot of money, right?" It's like, yeah, we're making so much money now.
Yeah, you're like, it didn't cost me so much money just to be there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
So I mean,
yeah,
we've gone the whole long way to make it to the point where we can actually make good money on the music, and we still work hard. We don't have so much crew when we're touring or anything like that, and we do everything we can basically. We just still do it ourselves.
that's incredible. Would you kind of say that you have achieved some sort of success for the band that you were happy with? What is your idea of success, or what is your version of success for yourself?
I think that's to be able to do it, even though I'm an adult. I have avoided getting a normal job. That's a success to me. I don't need to buy an expensive car or live in a mansion. You know, it's just as long as it works, then I'm happy with it.
Yeah, and that's the dream, as somebody who has to go bartend for the people of Manhattan in a couple hours. I'm very jealous of what you get to do, but it just goes to show it's like, hard work pays off, and that's what you guys have done.
And I think all bands maybe have a point where like, is it really worth it? And those who are really like have the lifestyle in them, I don't think they are the ones who stop playing and give up. And then sooner or later, if you're good and you believe in what you do and you have your own thing, people will appreciate it. I think it took us at least 10, 12 years before we started seeing that we made any money out of it. So bands that have played for 5 years and like, we're not making any money. Well, maybe that's not the right way to look at it then. I mean, it takes time. I mean, there's so many bands out there. It takes time to build your fan base. Some bands are lucky and it's faster, and some maybe never makes money. But if you have this idea in your head that you need to make money, I think you're like in the wrong mindset. You still need to do it because it's fun, and play as much as you can when then you have fun when you do it, instead of pushing things and not enjoying it because you don't make money. And it's hard. I mean, the world is focused on money. You need money to survive, so it's a tricky thing.
Yeah, I think it's just about staying humble and not spending your money on dumb stuff in general. That's which is hard for a lot of people, especially in the US, and people, it's all about like what you have around you, what sort of like fancy thing you drive, or what sort of places you go out to, and whatever. When you could just spend money on fuzz pedals, I think that's a better way to do it. Yeah.
Or guitars, that's more expensive.
Yeah, exactly. So you guys have your own festival coming up in November. Is that correct?
Yes.
Truckfighters Fuzz Festival number 4.
Yes.
And how long have you been doing? I guess this is the 4th one. How long have you been doing this festival? And anybody you want to shout out who's playing it?
Well, it's the 4th year, but it was a break for the pandemic 1 year. And this year we have finally got Valley of the Sun to come to Sweden again. The Ohio stone, they're more like rock and roll, stoner rockers. But it's very funny. I mean, it was the first band we signed to Fuzzerrama, basically. And they have been doing really well the past years, I think, especially in Europe, but also the States are starting to understand how good they are.
Yeah, they're
so I'm really happy they're coming. That's like my main happiness about the festival this year.
Hell yeah.
But I'm happy that all bands are coming. Obviously, it wouldn't be a festival without all the bands there.
Just Valley of the Sun. We'll just call it a
And
festival.
Truckfighters.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, this has been super fun. Anything else you want to promote, talk about? Anything else you just want to let the fans know listening?
No, just if there's fans not aware, I did one album with a solo, kind of another band, solo project / band. It became a band, ENIGMA Experience. So if you need more Dango sound, but you're listened so much to Truckfighters albums, you can't take it anymore, check out ENIGMA Experience.
Hell yeah. Well, Dango, thank you so much for doing this. I hope you have a great evening over there. And looking forward to seeing you when we see you. And thanks for doing this.
Thank you,
guys.
Dango.
Have a good day.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Have a great day.